to Close Listening. I'm Zach Morgenstern, joined as always by silent co-host Ludwig von B. Today's album is called Still Got That Hunger. This is the most recent album by the Zombies. It's from 2015. They funded it through a crowdfunding site. This is an album I ended up listening to by accident. I think I meant to get out their second album from back when they were a sort of active 60s band, the album that counts as their real classic, Odyssey of Oracle. And I must have clicked when on the library's website by accident on this one instead. But I was glad to enjoy the experience. I was glad to see what the Zombies are up to today. Now, with lots of bands that exist years after their prime, you can debate to what degree these are still the Zombies, since a whole bunch of the core members are not there. That said, I think they meet the minimum for still getting to use that name because they still have the same lead singer who it's been throughout the years, Colin Blunstone. So the voice, the most distinct part of the band, is still in the band. And then the man who was their principal songwriter and the founding member, the keyboardist, Rod Argent, he is also there and writing all the songs. So even though Chris White, who wrote some of the songs, or Hugh Grundy, their drummer back in the day, or Paul Atkinson, and their original guitarist aren't there, I still think it's reasonable to call this the Zombies. I know there are some bands where they continue to use the name, even though the lead singer is gone, even though the primary songwriters are gone, but the Zombies still have their core here. And also interestingly on this album was the original bassist of the Zombies, Jim Rodford. So the bassist when the band actually was the 1960 Zombies was Chris White, but Jim Rodford, who was the cousin of Rod Argent, was playing bass with the band back when it was just forming, when it was a rough idea. So before they really had a career, but you could say then, at least from Rod Argent's perspective, there are three actually classic Zombies in this lineup, which is then rounded out by two later additions to the band, Tom Toomey and Steve Rodford. So that said, what does one make of the actual music the Zombies put out in 2015, so many years after their musical heyday? The first track on the album is called I'm Moving On. It's a cream-like blues sound, and message-wise, it insists the past is the past. We quickly start to see there might be a bit of a concept here because track number 2 is called Chasing the Past. This is, I guess, a sad, less certain version of the message from the last song on it, and you hear more emphasis on Rod Argent's piano playing, and it ends up sounding kind of like a Steely Dan song. Track number 3, Edge of the Rainbow, has kind of a similar song to Chasing the Past, though it reminded me more of Ray Charles than Steely Dan, because I guess it sounded quite a lot like the song Drown in My Own Tears. And lyric-wise, similar message again, though trying to be a bit more hopeful. The first real standout on the album for me is track number 4, New York. And this one just comes in with nice, clean, but fairly big sound on organs. You know, think the opening to Oliver and Company, Once Upon a Time in New York City, or Taylor Swift's Welcome to New York. The point is there's a certain organ sound that invokes the sort of big city bustle, but still happiness and hope of New York City. And, you know, after having 3 songs that are sort of abstractly about trying not to live in the past, this song gives in and says, you know what, we got an awful lot out of the past. The past is a huge part of the British musical story. You know, one could say the heart of the 1960s was the cultural redefining of the American and British relationship. Of course, it had been happening gradually throughout history, but in this moment in particular, no longer was America the upstart republic with modern liberal ideas, and Britain was the crusty old conquering monarchy. Instead, America was the home country of this cool blues music and country music and rock and roll music that inspired British lads to make their own great music, which in turn created the British invasion. So America had excited Britain, and then Britain came back and incited America. And this point about the 1960s sort of changing the cultural definition of British and Britain America alike, at least from one perspective, really resonates with me because I remember cheering for England in one of the European Cups, and an Indian colleague came up to me and gave me a friendly, come on, are you seriously cheering for the English? And I was like, why? And I'm like, oh shit, he's thinking of the British Empire. Of course, an Indian guy wouldn't cheer for England. And from a political perspective, that makes a lot of sense to me. But I guess I just really started to think of England, not in terms of the English monarchy, who I am very much against, but just in terms of the Beatles and lads going down to the pub to watch a nice game of footy. I was thinking of working class and rock and roll England, not imperial England. And that sort of love between England and America that's not about the British or American empires, but is about this narrow but fun cultural understanding of the two countries, that really comes out in the fun of the song New York, track 4, one of the highlights. Track number 5 is called I Want You Back Again. This was a song the Zombies first recorded in 1965, so it was a revisit to that song, really showing off Rod Argent's jazz piano skills. Track number 6 is called And We Were Young Again. This is smoky jazz pop. Again, it has kind of a Steely Dan feel to it. Lyrically, it's the same concept as the Frank Sinatra standard, You Make Me Feel So Young. But that song is pretty unequivocally happy, whereas this one finds kind of melancholy and saying, this makes me feel young, but I guess I'm not young. Track number 7 is called Maybe Tomorrow. It struck me as kind of countrified hippie music, vaguely reminds me of the song In the Summertime. No, 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 no. And again, it has that message in it of just waiting for something better. It ends with the lyric, just like the Beatles used to say, I believe in yesterday. And on the one hand, this feels like the Zombies just doing a corny throwback. They're giving into this idea, we're stuck in the past. We don't have any new ideas. All we can do is sing about how great the 60s were. But at the same time, I think Colin Blunstone nails the vocal on this one. He makes it sound really heartfelt and not just a kitschy reference to the Beatles. So I appreciate that. Track number 8 is called Now I Know I'll Never Get Over You. This is the other candidate for my favorite on the album next to New York. So I was a bit disappointed when I was putting this video together and read that it was a re-recording. Apparently Colin Blunstone had put it out in a solo album in 2009. So I guess I'll have to listen to that version and see if they really nailed it on this one or it's just a slight adjustment. But anyway, it has an echoey rock sound to it. Think, there she goes again. And it continues the theme of feeling stuck in the past, but through a different, more focused topic, rather than a band singing about how they feel old and out of place. It's transposing those kind of feelings to a relationship. That said, even though this one feels like it has real hit potential, it may just, secretly be loaded with a lot of nostalgia as well. Some of the lyrics feel like a reworking of The Police's Every Breath You Take. And there's one line that just goes, we can work it out, which isn't common enough a phrase, but it still feels like they're throwing in the title of the Beatles song. Track number 9 is called Little One. It's the opposite of Now I Know in that it's piano based. It doesn't have that glittery pop sound. And rather than being mopey and hopeless because of lost love, this song is expressing undying gratitude for the mere existence of a relationship. Though when I thought about it for a second, I thought it's quite possible it's not actually about loving a person and obsessing with this love. It sounds like it might be about a cat or something. You're petting them in your lap. And then finally, the album concludes with track 10, Beyond the Borderline. It has a kind of feel-good 70s pop kind of feel to it. Might be something that solo Paul McCartney would have written. I found the lyrics at the beginning of the song a bit awkward. They're referencing the sort of themes we've heard throughout the album. It goes, I don't want to lose this precious time. Babe, you've come so far. You've crossed the borderline. So the last two songs are about absolute love and devastating breakup. And now it's as if the singer is saying, I've got to settle for just past the borderline because I'm just desperate to have a happy ending at the end of this record. But other than that awkward lyric, I thought it was a nice little song to listen to. So listening to this album, I felt like I was grappling with kind of the same questions that Rod Argent was listening to. Sort of, is it possible to hear a band that established themselves decades before and not hear it as a nostalgia project? Like, am I projecting onto this album, or is there something about it where it just feels like they're referencing the past more than creating something new? Is there something about New York, as great a song as it is, where it just feels like a tribute to something in the past more than a new hit song? I don't know. Listening to music is a psychological experience. And there are songs that I very much like on this one. As I said, Now I Know I'll Never Get Over You and New York. And I guess the question will, and just time will have to show, do these melodies actually stick in my head? Are these latter day zombie songs I really come to love? Or is this just a nice sort of reunion of these two central figures of this classic band? Let me know what you think of the album in the comments below. I'm Zach Morgenstern. This is Ludwig von B. See you next time.